the hierarchy of power in the DC universe did not change. Black Adam is directed by Jaume Collet-Serra, apologies if I pronounced that wrong, I probably did, and stars Dwayne Johnson in the title role with Aldous Hodge, Pierce Brosnan, Noah Centineo, and Quintessa Swindle as the Justice Society. Nearly 5,000 years after he was bestowed with the almighty powers of the Egyptian gods and imprisoned just as quickly, Black Adam is freed from his earthly tomb, ready to unleash his unique form of justice on the modern world. Finally, after years of being in development and sometimes sped in production, the Black Adam movie finally exists. It's been hyped up a lot by the studio as if it has the ability to shape the future of the DCEU, and it didn't really. Dwayne Johnson was clearly the perfect choice for the role due to his build, his smolder, and his overall skill. He surprisingly was tolerable for the most part, and it didn't feel like a generic rock performance. One thing I noticed about every trailer was the amount of action, and I can confirm that the film is very action heavy. In fact, the action is the strongest aspect of the film. They may seem like your typical superhero fight scenes, but these sequences are the most fun you'll be getting from the movie. All of the visual effects, except for the villain, were perfectly done. From the first explosion to the artistic credits, the CGI workers and VFX artists deserve a heavy pay for their work. Lorne Balfe, apologies if I pronounced that wrong, has had much experience in the superhero musical scores, and while again it's very typical and generic for a superhero film, his score was very strong. His music perfectly set the tone and intensity of the action in the cinema. The 4 members of the Justice Society were interesting to watch as well. Hawkman was a strong character due to his morals and eagerness for justice itself. Dr. Fate was enjoyable to see in action due to his beautiful set of abilities. Atom Smasher was comedic enough to tolerate on screen. Cyclone was surprisingly interesting as she has the most fun to watch, and I believe she has the potential to lead her own project as I would have liked to see more of her. The other 2 main characters of the story weren't as interesting as the others. The child character in particular felt very generic. Dialogue with that character and some other lines of dialogue were delivered very weakly. What I mean by that is that there are moments in which what the dialogue is doesn't match up with the actor's mouth movements. Moments like this distracted me a lot as it felt like I was watching a dub. The villain of the movie was also quite unnecessary as the story could have been told with an obstacle rather than a CGI villain. The villain itself ends up being a CGI monster with incredibly generic villain dialogue presented in a weak fashion. The first act of the film is quite slow as it focuses heavily on the lore of Black Adam. After a few minutes it began to drag, but eventually began to move steadily until a certain point in which the story slowed down to build to the climax. In short, the film doesn't move much when Black Adam isn't on screen. This unfortunately resulted in the runtime feeling slightly longer than a simple 2 hours. I am glad to see that the movie finally got made, but its final result isn't very memorable. I'm sure I'll rewatch the film at some point down the road, but I'm in no rush whatsoever to revisit it. The studio definitely hyped it up too much, but I'm not complaining if they choose to continue the story. So, apologies for my 2-month hiatus. I just realized in the first video I uploaded, I mentioned how I wanted to upload at least 1 review a month, and I just broke that monthly streak because I missed September. Damn it.